Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 120, written by RoyalRot. A man, there he stands, devoid of a face, he occupies no one place. About 3 or 4 years ago, sometime in the summer, I was driving home after visiting a friend for some gossip talk. It was around 3 a.m. The drive would be about 15 minutes, and I had made this trip countless times. I left my friend's house, and as I was making a bit of a walk to my car, I noticed a figure standing across a large 6-lane road between us. It definitely caught my attention, but I refused to make eye contact, and I just got in my car and left. I made my U-turn and would pass right by the figure. It only took me a few short seconds to make this turn as well, and I was curious. Within that time frame, the figure was gone. I grew up with childhood schizophrenia, so this occurrence didn't frighten or bother me, and I wrote it off in my brain as a simple trick on my mind. As I drove, I only had a straight shot until I got home for an easy while. I turned on some music and stayed in the left lane. Pausing for a stoplight, my eyes wandered and I noticed the same figure. He was standing on the sidewalk, staring at me. Or so it felt he was staring at me. I couldn't decipher a face no matter how long I stared. I began doing reality checks and other mental health exercises, but they didn't falter the figure's countenance, as they normally would. It wasn't until the light turned green and I drove on, checking in my rearview mirror for him, that he had vanished again. I became much more aware at this point, keeping my eyes scanning the road and sidewalks as I focused on getting to my destination. I saw him again, but this time, he was standing in the bicycle lane by the sidewalk. I passed him. I was wildly curious about why I was seeing this, already making a mental note to talk with my therapist about this occurrence once getting home, marking it off as a lapse in my mental health. There he was again. He was closer. He stood in the left portion of the right-hand lane, in the middle of the street. He never moved, never breathed, nothing. It just appeared that he remained staring in my direction as if expecting me. I passed him. I was almost halfway home, making a mental note and being glad in my mind about it, before a very enormous, strange, and uncomfortable feeling filled my stomach. It was a feeling of both disgust and of fear. I quickly scanned everywhere around me for him. Then I saw him. He was suddenly right there, right in front of my car, and I was approaching rapidly. I slammed on my brakes and gripped my steering wheel tightly. My car halted with a heavy lurch, my seatbelt locking tight and my head flinging forward. I was certain anyone who saw me would think I'm insane. But what had happened was nowhere near what I expected. Within seconds of stepping down on my brakes, a car with all of its lights off rolled out backwards directly in front of me from the mouth of one of the reservoirs that was off to the side of the road. 2 real men ran after the car and grabbed it, forcing it to stop its roll right in front of me. One was a gangly but taller man with sunken face and harsh beady eyes. The other was a bit thicker, with a torn shirt and a beanie on. My headlights illuminated the interior of the front seats, and the 2 other men stared holes into me as they also realized the situation. My breath was caught in my throat when I noticed another male slumped over the steering wheel of the car, unmoving. His face was pointing downwards. He had very short hair, and his seatbelt was nearly dangling him against the wheel. They saw that I noticed him, and I did my best to tear my stare away from him. The 2 men pushed the car out from in front of me, and the second I had any clearance, I sped off like a bat out of hell. As I was driving away, I constantly checked my rearview mirror for when they would stop pushing the car. They didn't. They pushed that car straight into the reservoir. I heard a nasty scraping sound and just did not look back. I immediately pulled off the main road and got myself home using the neighboring streets. I wasn't sure if those men would come after me or not, and I hoped to God that they wouldn't. I got myself home, finally, exited my car, and had the police on the phone to report what I saw. There the dark figure stood, across the street from me again, staring darts into my soul. I ignored him and hurried inside. The moment I got in, I locked every door and tightly shut every window. About an hour after calling the police, I heard nearly 6 different police sirens start up and fade far into the distance. I don't know what I saw, but what I do know is if that dark shadowy figure never stopped in front of my car, I would have slammed into that darkened car and those 2 men in that exact second. I told my therapist later what I had experienced, and she said she didn't know exactly what to make of it. I had never seen a figure like that before. Looking at him was like looking at a floater in your eye. I just couldn't see him. I still think about this experience every time I pass that reservoir. I always have an urge to call the police to follow up, but I never feel as though they'd tell me any details. It haunts me, especially the slumped man. Case notes, file number 120. I think there are 2 clear possible explanations here. The first, this man was a spirit of whoever died or was killed in that car that you nearly slammed into. Although, by your description, he doesn't look like this figure that was appearing to you, so maybe not. If it was, he was trying to warn you of the danger and also hoping you'd contact the authorities to seek a form of justice for him. Now, how he'd have known the car would roll out at precisely that moment, I'm not sure. And hell, was he even dead at the time? I don't know. Would spirits have that greater perception of time than we do when we're alive? Not a thought I've pondered on too much. My instincts, though, actually suggest that this was a reaper. It wasn't your time yet, so he appeared to you, but not through sight, directly in your mind. I think this is why your brain was struggling to process him, because you're not meant to see him, and you weren't, not with your eyes anyhow. Did you have a headache after this experience? RoyalRot responded briefly saying, I got a bit of a cold after this happened actually, and a headache too. I'm a bit of a germaphobe, so I don't get ill very often. Could say the illness was from anything honestly. Very interesting though. And I responded quickly too, saying, I thought you might have, just a hunch, but obviously this isn't how our brains are designed to process information, so it might have jumbled things up for you at least a little bit. Case file number 121, written by Kawaiikidney. A signal, a mind, made for a life, oh so divined. Hey guys, Lurker here, wondering if anyone has experienced anything similar to this. I will often think about an event or person or item, and they will happen, appear, or reach out to me. These thoughts always have the same feeling to them. It's as if they're coming into my mind, not actively thinking of them. Almost like a radio receiving a signal. My most recent example, for the past several weeks, maybe months, I have had the intense thought come into me that a car will crash into my window. To be fair, these thoughts have happened before. I have very violent and overtaking intrusive thoughts, too much to delve into though. However, that particular image of the car crashing into my house has never been so persistent. It's usually planes crashing down in my house, or bombs. That thought is so intense and can happen multiple times daily, has happened for years straight. Anyways, I just couldn't shake this feeling, or thought, and the fear bundled with it. Then suddenly, me and my boyfriend were driving to Walmart, and on our usual route still in the suburbs, I see a cop car ahead. I keep my eyes glued and see nothing other than a car plastered into the side of a house. It felt like a part of my mind clicked, like, aha, I haven't had that thought since, which is super rare for persistent intrusive thoughts. That was an extreme case. I often think of people, the thought will come into me almost like a wave. They will text me that same day, reach out somehow. It happens nearly without fail. I think of a friend I haven't seen since graduation while at work, and not an hour later, he walks past me at my job and we end up rekindling. I don't think it's me manifesting, because I can't will people to reach out to me. The thoughts have to come naturally, and it's almost a strange sense of letting go and the thought overtaking my mind. It's not invasive whatsoever, and I nearly never notice that feeling because it's just so natural, a part of me. But when I think back, it's definitely not a normal feeling. I sound like a weirdo right now, but this is the best way I can describe it. This happens so often, it just feels like I'm glancing into the future just a little. I never feel uncomfortable or bad when these things happen. It always feels just like gentle affirmation for something good. No clue. Edit. this got way more traction than I was expecting, and it's made me feel a little bit more at peace. Thank you. Case Notes, File number 121. This must be such a curious life to live. But as you describe it, it sort of seems like a signal transmitted and interpreted by your brain. I wonder why you specifically. Perhaps these signals, this information is out there, everywhere, just like cell towers constantly beaming information omnidirectionally from towers. But without a specific SIM card, you can't access it. It's conceivable that some people's brains are wired in a way to receive those signals. Of course, then the real question is, where are they coming from? And what kind of signal are they? And especially if they're from the future, well, how is that possible? If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. And you may as well start a binge session now. I have so many more stories on my channel.